Alright guys, TacticalRab here today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Massive day in the Call of Duty world yesterday with Methodz returning for OpTic for the first time in several years, the Vaznev not being nerfed as we thought, and also Ghosty revealing exactly how things went down in the OpTic camp over the last couple of weeks or so, basically saying that Dashy now is acting as the general manager of this team. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Plenty to dive into. Firstly, we shall start with ranked play because last night there was a lot of discussion around the top 250. The first players got in there. Shotzzy was one. 32 hours to get from bronze all the way to top 250. Impressive work, no doubt. But Caden actually mentions here the hackers that they keep running into. So definitely a problem that Lawrence mentioned that Trek is aware of and trying to deal with. Whether Infinity Ward can actually resolve this, we'll see, because of course Trek are the guys running the show on the ranked play side, but Infinity Ward still have to do some stuff. Now, I think there was also talk about the glitch that can happen right now. So let's say occasionally your SR will look to have reset, and then if you just play another game, it'll come back again. That's just a visual bug that Infinity Ward, I believe, tweeted that they'd solved, but I don't think they've actually solved it. It's that they got deleted. But yeah, Kenny I thought was pretty funny. He says S&D doesn't belong in ranked. To know that some people say there's too much S&D or too much Hydro Hardpoint or whatever, but maybe it'll even out over time a little bit more. And this guy Noel kind of tweets out that he beat Kenny, and then Kenny's like, brother, you're terrible, disrespectfully, which I thought was pretty entertaining. Also, Drazah, I believe, might have got top 250 later on. There was a pretty funny screenshot here actually that came through from this matches that they played. So Drazah played up against his own organization, 100 Thieves, Enable, Shane, Jacob, and Mudog, of course, part of the Oak Boys there, and of course Shane filling it as well. Drazah almost drops 50 to 3-2 them, reverse sweep on LSELO control. I know that Jacob was saying, okay, I got fried, but I was using a Vaznev on LSELO control, which can be a pretty hard time in fairness. Speaking of the Vaznev though, this is what the testing indicate in terms of how well this weapon changed. Now, Exclusive Ace reckons the nerf was effectively negligible on core game modes. There's been no changes to range, there's been no changes to time to kill, the only change is to some slight damage numbers at the longer ranges. So I thought this would be a range reduction in the kind of 5-shot kill range, let's say, or 4-shot, 5-shot kill range. That's not the case. Basically, the base damage has gone from, 18 and 15 to 17 and 16, and it's gone from 19 and 16 to 18 and 17. So some tiny tweaks to the Vaznev only is what the actual changes are. It's funny how this works, because yesterday I did say that sometimes things change, and okay, something has changed, but it's so minor and negligible that pretty much any changes people have felt, according to Exclusive Ace, are just placebo. And I got a lot of interesting replies to this tweet. Some said, oh, it's definitely worse, there's no way, it's definitely way worse in XYZ reason, and others were like, yeah, I knew it, this guy, I'm still fine with it. So it's really interesting to see how that goes. So look, I trust Exclusive Ace's testing on this one. He's very rarely wrong, so I would imagine that indeed the Vaznev is basically the same as it was before, and probably won't change the meta much. But it might be funny, because if the pros now believe it's worse, they might start to use more scars, right? Or maybe they even use the MP5 and we see one of those come out. We'll see how it goes. The only change this might make that some were mentioning is that, okay, let's say your teammate hits someone 3 times with the scar but doesn't kill them. They'll be on a certain amount of health where the Vaznev used to be able to one-shot them at certain ranges and now might have to 2-shot them at certain ranges. So, there's specific circumstances which will arise a few times in a map probably where the Vaznev used to one-shot and now might 2-shot instead. So, but in terms of actual, if someone's on 100 health and you're shooting them from a certain range, it should be the same weapon. Whether this was the intended change, whether they really intended to do this, I don't know. Hopefully it can say as it is, because I'm quite happy with the way the meta is right now, but I know that a lot of AR players are probably, were quite happy to see the Vaznev get nerfed, but it doesn't really seem like anything has changed. So yeah, we'll see what happens tonight when the matches start, whether we see the same amount of Vaznevs as we were seeing back in Major 2. Let's talk about this crazy thing as well from the Scump Gaming team of the Major. So this, I'm guessing, I'm not exactly sure where it's fan voted, but it is, I believe, fan voted nonetheless. So the 4 players of their team of the Major were Dashy, which I think is totally understandable. He was arguably the best player of the entire stage for the OpTic team. Okay, aBeZy was the best player, but, for OpTic, and given where Dashy was before and the amount of impact Dashy had in crucial series, Dashy, I think, deserves to be here. aBeZy was absolute no-brainer. This guy was best player in the game this stage. And then Hydra was the 3rd man on the team. I think it's probably understandable as well. Yes, Solanus didn't do great at the Major, but Hydra's numbers have still been insane. And, people are still saying he might be the best player in the game. But the 4th player is mad to me. Scump got selected here after playing 1 series, dropping like a 1.25 or whatever it was, turning on Zinni. Like, that's enough to get in Team of the Week. And even Scump was mind-blown about this. He was like, hang on a second, what? Like, Team of the entire major. Scump gets, and I guess, yeah, Dashy got 21% of the total fan vote. And does it say what Scump got at the end too? I'm guessing it does. So, I mean, yeah, I just thought this is hilarious, to be honest, right? That Scump in his final stage, despite having played one series, manages to get in the Team of the major. So, you know, this is why fan voting, I guess, can be a little bit busted. Or maybe more than just a little bit busted. And these were some other options that could have been gone for here. So, of course, aBeZy made it in, Dashy made it in, Hydra made it in. But outside of that, Scrappy had a good stage. You know, I guess you'd need another AR in this sense, usually, with aBeZy and Hydra. So, they chose Scump, whatever. I guess he was an AR briefly for that team. They could have chosen Scrappy or Cell or someone. But, well, I don't know. I guess it's fan voted, right? So, Scump gets in. But pretty funny to see how that turned out. I thought Scump was mind-blown as well that he managed to get in there. And also, Lineman put together, so not only the top 10 rated cards, but also the worst 10 rated cards. And obviously, a lot of this will be biased towards the teams that played badly, just because there's additions and, well, reductions to the ratings based on the overall record of the team. So, for example, like Asim gets -4 on his overall numbers because he was on a London team that went 1 in 5 this stage. So you will see a lot of London guys, a lot of Florida guys, a lot of Los Angeles Guerrillas guys. Cammy is here as well, though, with a 0.88, which I thought was really interesting that Cammy, like, his numbers have not been good at all, at least in terms of, like, well, pure KD, but also kills, impact, this type of stuff. But also, Burger of the Week is back, baby. It's been a while since Lineman's done one of these. With Mack with the Burger King crown on here, I thought was, you know, pretty disrespectful, but, you know, it's all in good fun or whatever. And obviously, we know how Seattle Surge operate, right? They have one bad stage, and then they bounce back. So this stage, they should probably be quite good again, unless the team is completely chalked, as it might well be. Let's talk Methodz then. Last night, this was confirmed shortly before the second video of the day went live that there was a major announcement coming. Of course, we all knew what this was, to be honest, right? Like, Methodz had made it very clear in his announcement at the major that, indeed, you know, the future is green, all this stuff. Like, it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what was going to be happening here. Now, I thought his announcement was actually really well done. Now, okay, I must admit that the kind of shaking of the screen and everything, it, like, made it look like there was obviously, if there was actually a stream crash here, he should have just had something where the audio was like, you know, cutting out, and then it just went to black, and then maybe after that, this screen then came up, like, doing all this, like, distortion stuff. I think made it kind of, gave it away a little bit that it was not, well, it was planned, let's say, when this screen came up. But I still thought it was really well done. The fact that he pre-recorded that segment there in his previous apartment, and then he was actually in Texas for the reveal. I think this made sense, right, for him to be here with Scump. I thought they would not do it quite as well as they did. So congrats to Methodz, obviously. Really cool to see him back in the OpTic green, and obviously makes perfect sense, right? It's kind of funny, really. Like, Scump just completely turns on him in that series they played against Boston. Scump's final series then retires, and then sends Methodz into retirement a couple of weeks after that. So yeah, really cool stuff to see. It was a great stream last night as well, and we're going to see a lot of Methodz, I imagine, on the watch parties going forwards also, which is going to be very entertaining. These guys, I mean, the chemistry is absolutely out of control. Of course, if you guys are unfamiliar, Zinni was on OpTic a few years ago during the World War II days, of course, joining OpTic Gaming. I mean, yeah, the Dynasty team they had at the time. I must say, this thing was quite funny when, well, maybe not funny for Pred, but OpTic Methodz tweets out home at OpTic and all this, and it was really cool to see. And then Pred replies, "Congrats, brother." And I'm sure, like, Pred's replied, like, you know, typing this through gritted teeth, right? It's like the meme where the guy is like has like a smiley face on, and then he's actually like really angry underneath and all this stuff. So I mean, like, I don't know, maybe Pred's gonna be next up here to join OpTic at some point in the future. But yeah, nonetheless, I thought it was pretty interesting that Pred was applying congrats when Methodz, of course, got to join OpTic, that Pred would have liked to do about a month or so ago at this point. And also just to say, right, since Methodz last competed for OpTic back in World War II, we're talking like 4 or 5 years ago, there's only 19 pros that are playing now that were still playing then, right? So I guess World War II champs was when this was active, and these are the only players that are still around today, really, in the league that were active back then. So it's quite a large percentage, but I mean, just to think about it, right, out of you know, the 48 players, I guess they're including subs here as well because Classic is here, but out of the 48 players in the league, only 19 of them pretty much were around about 4 or 5 years ago. The rest of the league is pretty much brand new players that weren't even competing back then. Like Simp, for example, wasn't competing when Methodz last competed wanted for OpTic, but of course all these players were. And obviously I'm just joking around here, right, about the OpTic dynasty, but that was the team that of course was, well, the case back in World War II, because Methodz wasn't even meant to be on this OpTic team. They wanted Zuma, they wanted John, they maybe wanted, like, I don't know if it was aBeZy, or they wanted an SMG, right, because obviously you want that when you've got Octane as your AI, you've got Crim as what would be the flex, but Crim had to run the SMG because they brought Ziddy in because they had no other options. And this team was actually quite good at hardpoint. Gets a bad rep, this team. Yes, they placed badly at champs, but they're actually better than people, I do believe, give them some credit for. Now, speaking of OpTic though, Methodz isn't going to be on the starting team or anything, and I guess Scump is still kind of their substitute player, but Ghosty was explaining exactly what happened when he joined the OpTic Texas team. We know that Fellow was consulted on this, we know that Dashy also consulted Parasite for his opinion, and it's very interesting to see who's running the show behind the scenes at OpTic nowadays. Rambo might be technically the general manager, but it doesn't seem like he was really involved in this at all, because Shotzzy was the one to talk to Fellow, and Dashy was then the one to actually make the call to Ghosty. Like, this is kind of, it's old school vibes in a way, right? Because back in the day, the players ran the show. Nowadays, you'd have a GM that would make those calls, or the coach would make those calls. But no, it was Dashy asking Parasite, getting his opinion, then making the call to Ghosty to say, hey, we want you to join OpTic Texas. Ghosty was like, what, you want me to be a sub or something, right? Because, you know, was he going to take Scump's spot on the sub bench or whatever? But it was very clear after that that, yeah, he was meant to join as a starting player.
Shotzzy actually called me a few days after the event when I got home. And he said, yo, tell me everything you know about Dan. I was like, all right. I said, all right. Like, I'll give you the honest opinion.
Did Dashy give you a call?
Yeah, he basically gave me a DM and was like, yo, call me when you get a chance. Called him. Quickest phone call ever.
Yo, like, you trying to, like, play?
Yeah, basically, it was like, I mean, you know why I'm calling. I'm like, I mean, kind of, maybe, but, like, a sub spot, you know, and then 2 seconds later, he's like, you know, you're starting, blah, blah, blah.
Jesus.
Do you want to play?
What do you guys think about this, right? It doesn't seem long after that Eavesdrop podcast with Dashy where the keys have now been fully handed over to Shotzzy and Dashy. It's quite clear that those guys make the calls, and yeah, I thought it was interesting to hear that perspective, right? That there wasn't, well, potentially there was input from Rambo or from Hex or whoever, but it seems to me that Dashy asked for Parasite's perspective, Shotzzy asked for Fellow's perspective, and they agreed between them, like, yeah, this is what we want to do. Dashy was the one to make the call to Ghosty, and then to lock in that transaction, and of course they made it happen relatively quickly, because Ghosty was probably going to join Florida, because I mean he was having trials with them, and then got the call from Dashy later that night to say, do you want to join OpTic? And then of course it's a no-brainer at that point. So yeah, crazy turn of events, but also goes to show how quickly potentially the culture there, or like at least who's making the calls, has changed from Rambo being the head coach and the GM to now the players, and Dashy, who Hex has clearly said is the next generation, meant to be the leader. And it's quite cool that Hex has given Dashy this amount of responsibility, right? Dashy's not only meant to be the leader to take these guys to the next level, but he's also the guy making the calls to sign new players. Like, yeah, that shows an element of maturity, an element of Dashy wanting to be an OpTic for the long term, an element of Dashy maybe developing some further leadership characteristics that might be necessary for OpTic. Of course, iLLeY wasn't doing that much leadership stuff over the last few months, but still, they do need a formal-esque figure in the team, and if Dashy can become the formal-esque figure in and out of the game, then, you know, that's of course where this OpTic team might thrive in the long term. So thought it was a very interesting piece of information really that was coming out there, and I'll share this clip for you guys here in a second. Also, just quick reminder to sign up to Fantasy. There's only a few hours remaining to do that. This was Crone's team, but it might help you to choose your team if you know what matches are coming up this week and especially today. So these are the matches of the week. OpTic Texas, that new lineup, only plays one game this week, effectively a must-win game against LAG, but tonight there's 3 games. The latter 2 I think are very interesting. So we get the new Vegas team with 2 Real up against Thieves. I don't imagine that Vegas are going to be that competitive, but at least Donnie is now playing from an actual facility, the FaZe facility we saw yesterday. Minnesota versus New York is fantastic. Rematch of the major, of course. This was a winners round 1 game, game 5, round 11. Tough to call. I would probably take New York 3-1 or Minnesota 3-2. Again, tough to say which way it'll go, but I'm going to take New York there, I think 3-1. And then Toronto, Boston. We get to see how Boston fare with Beans. The talent on this Boston team is crazy, but Toronto, like, they're so good online, right? I mean, they haven't been so good on land so far this season, but online they've been incredible. And if it goes game 5, I'm still not sure about the Boston ice situation, so I think I'm going to take Toronto, potentially 3-2 actually. I feel like this is going to be a close series. If it does go game 5 and Boston lose again, there will be questions raised, but very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.
I've never seen someone more stressed. I thought I was stressed. I swear to God, for an hour yesterday, we got to grind Monday. I mean, dude. Like, Like,
I mean,
I haven't streamed since Friday, Super Bowl bender, and then you got here, and I don't want to stream because I don't want to leak. But dude, like, and we've been eating and drinking. So like Monday, ranked, no more drinking. We're grinding. We're not taking a day off next week.
At least the